Amos Vorhees was a young man that came west. He must have just gone around to every farm and says, "I'd like to take your picture. Bring what's important to you."
He went all over Southern Oregon shooting hundreds, probably if not thousands, of photographs.
These rare glass plate negatives were taken more than 100 years ago. They exist in a private collection that is now being made public. They provide an authentic look at rural life, rarely documented.
The more this stuff surfaces from collections and from families and so forth like this is really what it takes to bring history out of the dark and into the light.
Funding for Oregon Experience is provided by the Robert G. and Marcia H. Randall Fund for Lifelong Learning, the James F. and Marion L. Miller Foundation, the Oregon Cultural Trust. Additional support provided by Kei Kitagawa and Andy Johnson Laird, the Clark Foundation, the Roundhouse Foundation, Fran and John von Schlegel, and viewers like you. Thank you.
One of my favorites. I had this one in my classroom.
Retired teacher and photographer Lloyd Smith has collected vintage photography for over 30 years.
It's just amazing when you think how old these are, and yet you still have these beautiful images.
Lloyd's interest began when a friend gave him a box of glass plate negatives.
I would guess that dry plates came in, at least the ones that I have, came into the 1880s and 1890s. This is damaged a little bit.
Over time, other people added to the collection, giving him their old photos, postcards, and negatives.
A lot of family stuff.
Until he had a collection of thousands.
And most of them are from Southern Oregon, some are on up into Portland. Again, I wish I knew where they'd come from. But people gave me stuff over the years, and I just stick them in boxes, file them away. When families go in and clean out an estate, they pitch pictures they don't know. They pitch glass negatives. They pitch stuff that they don't know what it is.
In the late 1800s, rural Southern Oregon was still rugged frontier, isolated by mountains and forests, and sparsely populated by hardy pioneers. Their lives might have simply disappeared from memory if not for this man. Grants Pass newspaper publisher Amos Vorhees documented average people in stunning detail with thousands of photographs.
I wish you could go back in that time machine and actually stand there and talk to those people, but those photographs give us a slice of life from that era.
The scope of the collection makes the Vorhees photographs especially valuable, but Amos Vorhees was not the first person to take pictures here. Photographers were working in the region by the mid-1850s. And some of those photographs still exist in both public and private collections.
We're just amazingly blessed to have these. I search for these photographs, and these photographs mean a lot to us as far as showing us what the landscape looked like in that period of time.
Photographers of the time took all types of images, but Vorhees photographs are unique in that they documented everyday people in their natural surroundings.
If Voorhees kept logs of any of this, they're all gone. So even though we don't know the names of these people, even though we don't know who they are, you can see how they dressed, you can see the style, you can see the living conditions they were in, so it gives you a complete picture of who they are without a name, but you still get a feel of what they were like. You can almost smell their body odors in these pictures.
Sure be helpful for a historian's purpose if the images were identified, but still, it's extremely valuable.
That's because relatively few of these glass plate negatives exist. Water, heat, and humidity can all ruin the images, and the glass is easily broken or damaged. Voorhees' grandson admits to destroying stacks of them for fun.
When he was a kid, they'd take those glass plates that all those beautiful photographs were on, and they'd use them for target practice with the BB gun, so you don't know what disappeared.
In Grants Pass, researchers at the Josephine County Historical Society are able to identify some of the Voorhees images.
There is so much, we just have so much information, we can't find what we're looking for when we're looking.
And this is what they did to a lot of them. They take the photo and they glue them on, so you don't know if there was anything written on the back or any date or notation. And then over the years, people would put things on it. And this is probably original, and it says Frida from Mama. The dog's name is Palo, P-A-L-O, that little Palo right there. And so that's kind of information that we don't often have on old photos.
Some of the images feature well-known locals, making identification easier. This is the Sexton family. They arrived in southern Oregon long before Amos Vorhees took this photograph. In the 1850s, they were some of the earliest settlers here, seeking their fortune in gold.
Mr. Sexton washed out in a pan one piece that weighed $13 and several dollars in fine gold. The Oregonian, 1867.
This has long been gold mining country. Josephine County is tucked into the rural Siskiyou Mountains. Two major valleys are carved out of 3 rivers and an extensive stream system. Here, creek beds glitter with the promise of gold and other valuable minerals.
Roy Briggs has struck it rich. His tent is filled with gold in sacks, in cans, in bottles, in tin cups, and cooking utensils everywhere. The Rogue River Courier, 1904.
The county was even named for an early miner's daughter, said to be the first white woman in the area, Josephine Rollins.
She was about 17 when she came and worked along the Illinois River mining gold. It's the only county in the state of Oregon named after a woman.
The state's first significant gold strike is said to have happened here in 1851. Within months, fortune seekers poured into the area, and violence soon erupted with Native American tribes.
All of a sudden, in the early 1850s, and the Native people were just, it was like overnight being overwhelmed by this flood of newcomers.
Over the next 6 years, the hillsides would ring with gunshots. The Rogue Indian Wars are considered some of the most violent battles in the state.
You can think of the Indian Wars down here as maybe a kind of ethnic cleansing.
Within a decade of Oregon's first gold discovery, the Rogue River area Indians were gone, killed, or removed to a far-off coastal reservation. And mining camps dotted the creeks and mountainside. Althouse, Browntown, Holland, and dozens of others sprung up almost overnight.
Miners kind of came and went out of these places and used them as their supply base or where they pick up mail and go into town and enjoy a spree.
The boys had a jolly time of it. there were 18 of us. We had 2 fiddlers and danced till 12 o'clock at night. We had no women to dance with. John Mickey, 1854.
Single men dominated the camps. Lonely and flush with gold, they attracted traveling dance hall girls who made a circuit through the gold fields, including Lotta Crabtree and Diamond Tooth Gertie.
The biggest complaint that the dance hall girls would display were the bruises on their ankles from the nuggets hitting them. And I mean, there's all sorts of stories like that.
The stories include legendary tales of shootouts, holdups, and lost treasure.
The Triscuit gang, the 5 of them, went out and basically robbed the assay office, killed the clerk, took that gold, that was $75,000, plus the additional gold they had, and went riding out of town on some heavily laden horses. They made it 3 or so miles, and then from there were caught. These guys basically shot and hanged them on the spot. And then from there, reported that they never found the gold.
Not all the towns were wild. Golden had 2 churches, but no saloons. Alcohol was banned.
I finally gave up and built a dance hall down at Wolf Creek. Had real good times there, but church folks still gave me trouble. Used to parade around the dance hall, praying away the devil. Harold McIntosh.
It was definitely a man's world. Young, single men running the gamut from wild, drunken debauchery to groups of men getting together on Sunday for Christian prayer. The diversity of this early mining population is really worthy of note.
At one point, more than half the miners here were Chinese, often working over old diggings in abandoned mines. But the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 placed tight restrictions on Chinese immigration and labor, and their numbers dwindled.
This is China Bo. He was greatly respected by the miners, mainly because he stuck around. And so he was kind of their token Chinese guy.
Eventually, most of the miners moved on. Gold became harder to find, and mining towns disappeared.
Yeah, here's a picture of Waldo. Here's a picture of the hydraulic elevators.
Waldo was once the Josephine County seat, but today photos and stories are all that remain of the once bustling community. The land here is rich in minerals. Eventually, mining equipment replaced the town's buildings in the search for gold.
So one of the things about Waldo, Oregon is that it's one of the few ghost towns in America that's been run through a sluice box.
They eventually just washed it away looking for gold.
The mining towns would come and go, but a ferry crossing on the Rogue River named Perkinsville survived and grew. In 1865, it would be renamed in honor of Ulysses S. Grant, becoming Grant's Pass.
And General Grant was never here. There's even an old postcard that shows General Grant's headquarters in the Indian Wars, and he was not here.
Grant's Pass developed into a rural trading center thanks to the new railroad connecting the Rogue Valley to northern Oregon.
The first train came in on Christmas Eve in 1883. And for a couple years, we were the railhead. And that's what really made Grant's Pass grow.
One of my favorite pictures actually is there's hardly anything to town except a couple railroad tracks running in and out and a street or two. And there's a white door over on this one building, and that was the Daily Courier offices.
A decade later, in 1895, Amos Vorhees arrived to work at another newspaper, the Oregon Observer. Originally a newspaper apprentice from Michigan, Vorhees traveled to Portland for work, but found Grant's Pass more to his liking. He married his Michigan sweetheart Clara and settled into life in Josephine County.
Somebody talked him into trying to buy the newspaper, but he needed a partner. All he had was a bicycle, so he rode 45 miles down to Ashland to talk to C.S. Price. And he asked him to help him buy the paper, be a partner. And he must have been quite a salesman because he talked C.S. Price into putting up his orchard as collateral on the loan for them to buy the newspaper.
Together, they purchased the Rogue River Courier. Their first edition rolled off the press July 1st, 1897.
Price was the editor, essentially, and Amos handled the business affairs and things. And they had one desk between them.
Just 2 years later, in 1899, Vorhees bought out his partner and became sole owner of the Courier. Everybody called him boss.
I think Amos was an all-business guy. When he was at work, he wasn't there to have a good time necessarily, and they didn't call him the boss for nothing.
For decades, Vorhees would be a leader in the newspaper business. He hired female typesetters at $1 a day, twice the going rate, promoting some of them to reporters. And all throughout his long career, Vorhees always invested in the latest technology.
It was about the only weekly outside Portland that had a typesetter. They were the first to have a linotype machine.
The Courier office was over a Kodak photography store. When Vorhees wanted the space, he bought it out, including all of the equipment. Always the businessman, he started selling cameras out of the Courier office. Before long, he was using the cameras too.
I don't think he had a lot of experience to begin with, but when you see his stuff just a few years later, his stuff looked like professional. They were absolutely impeccable. The development, the exposures, the composition of the photographs.
He took photos of the family home. He captured his son playing with toys and friends lounging in his backyard.
You'd see him at Crater Lake. You'd see him down at Rogue River on a little sailboat down there. You'd see them swimming. You'd see them hiking down the Rogue River Trail at Natural Bridge. And so they traveled everywhere. So I don't know when he ran his business, because he was always out doing things.
There are also hundreds of studio portraits. Including contact sheets with several poses, both serious and lighthearted. These images provide a glimpse of the people who built Southern Oregon's communities. But of all the images in the collection, it's these photographs of people in front of their homes that conjure the most interest and speculation.
He would never stand people together. He would have maybe two or three, have one standing off, somebody else standing over here, have them in their good clothes. You'd have something of interest in the photograph. It'd be a bicycle, it'd be a cow, it might be a horse, it'd be a plow.
Each unique image illustrates the reality of everyday life just over 100 years ago.
They were self-sufficient. They milked their cow, they made their butter, they grew their food, they butchered their cattle, their pigs. And those are the families that kept the United States going.
Taking the photographs required significant effort.
Here's a typical glass plate camera from the late 1800s. So to be able to take a picture with this, they would have to put a glass Fresnel plate or kind of a frosted glass in the back so that the image would be projected on it.
In order to capture the images, the camera had to be carefully set up and the glass negatives protected from damage. But Vorhees managed to take these photographs all over the region, and he did it traveling on his bicycle.
I can just see him packing as much as he could on that old bicycle, cameras and all the glass plates, and going around the community. Can you imagine how much effort and time it took to do that?
That shows a real commitment to recording this portrait of his home county.
The turn of the century was a time of transition. While some areas were seeing streetcars, electricity, and even the first automobiles, in parts of rural Oregon, homesteaders still arrived on wagon trails through thick forests.
Grants Pass, around the turn of the century, it was the metropolis of Josephine County, that's for certain. Most of the rest of the county was completely rural, if not more than rural, more like wilderness, if you will.
But change was coming. People were settling in, building schools and churches, creating communities.
Kirbyville will have the usual Christmas amusement: a shooting match, horse race, dance, and a wedding. The Morning Oregonian, 1886.
People fished the streams and visited the newly discovered Oregon caves. Miners changed the landscape with giant water cannons, while loggers fell ancient timber, and families dug a living out of the ground.
In 1902, we raised a fine crop of berries, ground cherries, and tomatoes and got good prices for them, but it was an awful lot of hard work. Fanny Whitlow.
So when you look at those pictures, you see the plows, you see the guys in the field. I've got pictures of threshing machine. They did it themselves. They were out there in the heat of the day doing their thrashing. They were doing their plowing. They were running the teams.
You know, they were sturdy stock. You could tell that they worked hard, and if you look at the houses in the background, they were sturdy little houses, and they did what they needed to do to survive.
The images are rich in details that provide information to historians and scholars. But what is still a mystery is exactly why Vorhees took the photos.
There'd have to be money involved because this would cost money to do it. So it's either something he loved or he's making money off of it. The families he took pictures of, you'd look at them and you think, they don't have any money to buy a picture.
Times were tough for the newspaper and the customers, I guess. So they would take like chickens and produce and things like that in barter for subscriptions and for advertising too. That was fairly common.
As far as following the money trail of where photographers got paid, it was pretty creative.
The railroad and city boosters may have commissioned the photos for pamphlets designed to attract newcomers and business to the area.
They would use the photographers to go out and take the pictures of these beautiful idyllic homes and homesteads, and what family of enterprise wouldn't want to be part of this?
Other city promotions included wooden arches, proudly proclaiming the region's livability. In 1920, It's the Climate would permanently greet visitors. And local business owners would form the Oregon Caveman Club to promote the Oregon Caves National Monument and everything else the area has to offer.
I was elected Cave Queen twice, way back when. I was Cave Queen first in 1962. Ooh, that's 50 years ago.
Newspaper publisher Amos Vorhees was a city booster and an active member of the community.
I think he was much more important than some people even give him credit for. I read somewhere that said that he had joined any and every community organization that he could join and participated as much as he could in each one.
Vorhees worked at the newspaper until his death in 1960 at the age of 91. Over the years, his photographs largely disappeared. They were packed up, given away, sold, and discarded. But some remain preserved in Lloyd Smith's basement.
I started realizing as I get into my advanced years, what's going to happen to my collections? What's going to happen to all this stuff? I've drugged them around. I don't want it stored, locked away in a vault.
Instead, he has decided to digitally scan each image.
For this project, we've scanned probably about, between all the negatives and everything, at least 5,000 to 8,000.
He has put the images online, where they are accessible to the public and free to use.
But he got the greatest smile on his face. He's just sitting there grinning. Look how cute they are. Their hats and everything. Sitting on the coast.
The beauty in our age of technology, and especially with a lot of these scanning of documents and so forth like this stuff is coming to light. And the more this stuff surfaces from collections and from families and so forth like this is really what it takes to bring history out of the dark and into the light.
You know, there used to be an opera house in Grants Pass. There used to be a train roundhouse, and there used to be a lot of things here. Well, I guess it means a lot more to you when you go out the door and you look around and you know what used to be there and who used to be there, and gives you some perspective on where you're at.
A lot of communities had people like Vorhees, usually one, maybe two in any community. They owe a lot to those individuals, in this case to Mr. Vorhees, for documenting this time of incredible change in Southern Oregon.
When you take a picture, that's a moment in time that you stopped. All it takes is one foolish guy just to pitch everything, and the history is gone. And so much of our history has been destroyed. But now we'll have a little piece of it here by a couple thousand images.
There's more about capturing Oregon's frontier on Oregon Experience online. To learn more or to order a DVD of the show, visit opb.org. Funding for Oregon Experience is provided by the Robert G. and Marcia H. Randall Fund for Lifelong Learning, the James F. and Marion L. Miller Foundation, the Oregon Cultural Trust. Additional support provided by Kei Kitagawa and Andy Johnson Laird, the Clark Foundation, the Roundhouse Foundation, Fran and John von Schlegel, and viewers like you. Thank you.